welcome to the podcast. I'm Joe Francis. This is, I think, going to be very useful for both aspiring entrepreneurs as well as existing entrepreneurs. This podcast is going to talk to some fantastic business people and give some insight and hopefully inspiration from their stories. Today's guest, and my first guest on this podcast, is Sujayath Ali. Sujayath Ali is currently the co-founder and COO of ShopUp. ShopUp is the largest and most valued startup of Bangladesh. It is modeled after Alibaba and focuses on B2B commerce, logistics, and fintech. Sujayath previously co-founded Voonik and was its CEO. Voonik was India's leading brand for value and mid-price fashion. Voonik merged with ShopUp. Before Voonik, Sujayath worked at Amazon and Visa. He holds an MBA from the Indian School of Business and also a bachelor's degree in computer science engineering. Welcome to the podcast, Sujayath Ali.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I think the key point about this podcast is to try and give over insights and learnings from people's entrepreneurial journeys. And I think a good place to start is right at the beginning, before even your professional background, with a little about your origin story, if you like, a little about, your background and upbringing.
Sure. So I come from a small town in South India, from Tamil Nadu. So, very uneventful kind of a childhood. As everybody in Tamil Nadu, my dream was also to become a computer engineer, a software engineer. Went into that, did my software engineering, and then post that I started working as a software programmer. At least at that point of time, mostly during my childhood, that was my dream. My dad, my relatives, everybody were government employees. So entrepreneurship was very, very remote to me. It was very alien to me. I forget about entrepreneurship. I did not even know any entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Everybody in my family, everybody in my extended family, they were all government employees. Their goal was to, even when I joined a private company, they were a bit reluctant. Like, is it safe? Why don't we take up something in government where job safety is there, right? That's the thought process in my family before I kind of started exploring myself. Again, coming from a small town, like the awareness is very limited. When I started interacting with other people, when my outlook changed, life took me in many different directions.
So would you say that your own mindset was shaped a little by that, in the sense that entrepreneurship, if anything, had somewhat of a negative connotation associated with it?
Yeah, it is. So I have been told stories about business people going down, just one bad deal and they get into debt, the fluctuations in terms of income, not having steady income, the stress that it causes. So most of the stories I heard during my childhood were pretty negative about entrepreneurship.
So at that stage, it was far from your mind to even consider running your own business, owning your own company. Right then, the goal was work for some large organization, ideally multinational.
Exactly. So I went into a multinational, and that was like my dream come true. Like whatever I wanted, I got it. And so I think that was pretty much my dream. Like I remember even during my 8th grade, there was a time when somebody visited my school and asked me what my ambition was. And I remember telling him that I wanted to become a software engineer in a multinational company. Like pretty much that was my bar at the time.
And after your bachelor's, did you immediately start working for a fairly large company? Did you get picked up from university?
Yes. So I'm not that academically brilliant. In fact, I have to thank someone.
I think you do yourself a disservice there.
So in fact, to get the seat in the engineering seat in South India, there were few reservations at that time, which we don't have today. Like there was a village quota for people coming from small towns. So I studied in a village school. So through that, I got into engineering. So I always had some sort of kind of thinking. I was not very confident, right? I had some, I wouldn't call it inferiority complex, but a bit of that. But getting a job from the campus in the first few days gave me a lot of confidence. And I think when I went into the job also, like whatever I did, I worked only for 2.5 years before going for my MBA. But that 2.5 years, I would say, was the period which gave me immense confidence. It allowed me to kind of explore what is possible and kind of do things which I did later in life.
So what kind of things were you working on then? And what led to you maybe thinking about doing an MBA?
Yeah. So in my life, you will see this like every step. I will guess what I'm going to do, and mostly I will be wrong. So when I went for my engineering, there were people who went for CAT and IIM B schools, and I used to make fun of them, saying we have already studied for 4 years, and the real education is only whatever we get on the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I to make fun of them, saying why they are going to waste another 2 years getting some either masters in science or management degrees. I never imagined like 2 years later I will be doing the same thing, and that pattern will repeat in my life. Every time, like I used to make fun, like same thing happened at ISB. Like I always made fun of people who wanted to start up because I thought like then why did they come for ISB? Like, they could have directly started up, use that capital and time to do things. But then I myself ended up starting up. So same pattern. So when I went into my first job, my aim was to progress as fast as possible in the career ladder. And so yeah, so I think again, like I worked in some of the technologies which are probably very, which will sound very alien now. Like I was working on mainframe technologies, like
Oh, right.
there were programming languages like JCL, CICS. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people will know those today. But I work primarily on the trading systems. I mean, like the stock market and trading and settlement systems, which were predominantly in mainframe. So most of, I mean, I worked only for 2 years in programming, but most of my work was in mainframes.
So would you class yourself largely as technically oriented rather than at that stage at least management oriented?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a lot of interest in technology. So even though I worked in mainframe, I took up a lot of side projects in Java and web technologies. I always had that keen. I was always keen towards tech, understanding what's happening new. So I always considered myself as a tech player.
Yeah. And was this around about the time, I guess, of the early 2000s, where the tech boom was blasting, and then, of course, as we know, the bubble burst. But
It is between 2002 and 2004. That's the period when I was working in software.
Yeah, okay. So what led to you deciding to halt that and go for the MBA? Were you at that stage thinking of just advancing your career again within a company, or were you looking for beginning to consider entrepreneurship as a career path?
No, so at that time, it was for advancement of my career. So I did well in the first 2 years. As I said, it gave me a lot of confidence coming from not like tier one engineering college or coming from a small town. I was not very confident of myself, but the work I did in the 2 years, I got promoted. I was in just 2 years, I was leading two teams. And that time, like I couldn't progress further because I was told like to get to the next level, I need to have few more years of experience. I need to spend that.
Yeah.
And when I noticed other people who were getting those kind of jobs, they were from IIMs and other colleges. So I thought getting a degree, management degree, would help me progress faster, because pretty much I thought the next 3 years are going to be stagnant
Right.
in the role that I was in before I can proceed to the next level. And I thought maybe my MBA would be a shortcut towards that.
And did that prove to be the case?
It did, right? So even though I did not go back to my previous organization, I did end up joining Amazon.
Right.
But yeah. So work wise, salary wise, like everywhere. So salary pretty much, I would say, like went up by 3x in 1 year. I don't think that would have happened
That's a pretty decent
if I had stayed
ROI,
on.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely.
And of course, adding
So,
Amazon to the resume has to have been good as well.
yeah, it is like so. I mean, like then Amazon is where I got these dreams of entrepreneurship, right? Before Amazon, I was, as I said, pretty much wanted to focus on career and kind of build myself into a tech career path, right? But yeah, so at that time I did not expect that. I don't think even at ISB people were aware so about Amazon, and I remember there were only 25 people who applied out of 270 people. So there
Really,
was very
that's unthinkable now, isn't it? With what
at that
Amazon
time four
has become, especially over the last few years. But I mean,
yeah.
going thinking on the Amazon experience, obviously it would give you a lot of confidence working for what has become one of the world's most famous companies and world's largest companies. Did you take a lot from that experience in terms of cutting edge technology and knowing what the latest trends were technology wise?
So I think technology wise, yes, but more than technology, I think culture wise, the DNA wise, there were a lot of learnings. In fact, like when people from my team came out and started Flipkart, the difference was like there were a lot of e-commerce companies even before that, right? The difference was getting that customer DNA, working backwards from the customers, what we call it Amazon, right? That was like the biggest takeaway. Like, how do we build a company? How do we build a culture which always thinks customer first, right? That was pretty revealing to me, right? When I would say yes, tech wise, and also the overall tech culture. What does it mean? It's not exact technology per se, but the tech culture, how that culture is built, how what is incentivized, how you recruit the best minds, how do you identify those best talents, and how do you make them work with each other? Because the biggest issue is like if you go and get the best tech minds, most of them are individual contributors. They're not team players. So I would say a lot of soft learnings than just a technology type of learning.
So you were taking quite a lot of insights from seeing the management and the policy type of structures that were put in place at Amazon, and that helped you envisage a good ways to run a company, even though at that stage you were not yet considering your own venture.
Yeah. So see, the actual projects that I worked within Amazon were not very big successes. They were mostly like research kind of projects, and they were mostly ahead of time. In fact, like today we are talking about blockchain. The product that I was working on back in 2005 was something similar. We were trying to create uh, uh, money that can be programmed, right? And it was very ahead of the market. So I wouldn't say I learned in terms of the business success. How do we build a very successful product, right? Within Amazon, there were a lot of other business units which exploded. So I was initially part of AWS, right? At that time, we were probably building the first version of Amazon Web Services, but I was working on the payment web services, which didn't pick up as much as, let's say, S3 or computing, right? So it's not like the business results gave me confidence, and I felt like if I could do this at Amazon, I could do it outside, right? It was more about, as I said, that how do we build these building blocks? How do we attract people? How do we create these teams? How do we create a culture which values customer? Right? Those were my takeaways.
So was Amazon before or after Visa?
Amazon was before. So after ISB, I worked at Amazon.
Okay.
And post I worked at Visa for Visa was a very short stint, like I would say like 18 months. Before returning to India and starting my own company.
Okay, so having worked for Amazon straight out of after MBA, and then working for Visa, both enormous companies. What led to you deciding to go on your own, and also what gave you the confidence that you could do this?
Yeah, so see, when I started at Amazon, initially I did a lot of mistakes, and I wouldn't say like unlike my programming job where I was doing a very good job from day zero. In Amazon, my first year or first couple of years were not so good. I did a lot of mistakes, but ended up pretty much like working for almost 7 years at Amazon. The last 3-4 years gave me a lot of confidence in my execution capabilities. And after coming to Visa, like I was very confident that if something goes bad, I can always land a job. But I saw like people who worked with me at Amazon, most of them, like the earlier team who were with me at 2005, went on to start some very good companies. They were shaping up India's startup scene, or they were creating it, right? Like before them, there was no Indian startup scene. Whether it's Sachin and Vinny, who started Flipkart, whether it's Infibeam, whether it's Gaurav, who started Bluestone, like pretty much Sanjay Suri, who at the time had his own startup, then he became like CTO at Nykaa. Like pretty much, I think there were some 25-30 members. Everybody were doing something on their own. So I felt left out. Like I was in US as well, right? So they were all in India. I moved to US after a couple of years at Amazon. So I felt like this. I also need to at least take a try, and if something bad happens, if I fail, I can always join again. Like I can always come back to job. I was very confident that getting a job is not going to be difficult. And I was also sure like my resume will be like actually be better if we have some entrepreneurship on the resume, right? So you can imagine like at that point of time, I'm still thinking from the job standpoint. I'm still thinking like a traditional employee. And I felt like I can just do the same thing, but on my own for a couple of years, and then if something bad happens, I can come back. Given that like I moved to US pretty early, like financially also I was a bit well off. I had some savings which can sustain me for a couple of years, and I can also invest few in my company. So that again like gave me confidence. In fact, even some of our ISB batchmates had become entrepreneurs. I met them like when I was in US. So all of when I say it's more like fear of missing out, right? FOMO.
Yeah.
Like all of these guys are doing, like why can't I also try it?
So the key thinking there was that you had something of a safety net financially. So at that stage, were you already married, had kids and stuff, or were you on your own at that?
I was married with a kid. Yeah, I was married with a kid. But as I said, financially, I felt I was safe. I can go on for a couple of years.
And you had the confidence that if things went south, then you were okay. You hadn't burnt bridges with any other companies. You could go back or go to another one.
Yeah. So that gave me confidence.
Excellent. So this then brings us towards the beginnings of Voonik, and that was certainly for me, having known you at ISB, an unusual one to find a hardcore techie going into the fashion business. Tell me how that happened.
Yeah. So I think also before that, the reason I was talking about my job and my upbringing is because to give one advice to aspiring entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurs are not different people, right? I come from a background where there are no entrepreneurs. I was always a career-focused person. I never worked in startup. I always worked in MNCs, right? I would look like 80-90% of the guys who are afraid of entrepreneurship, right, by themselves. So I don't think there is any characteristics or DNA or any special skills that makes or differentiates an entrepreneur from a traditional worker, right? It's just a flip. You take the plunge and then you will. I think anybody can do that, right? It's not like you need to have something special in you.
So you don't
that's
subscribe
like
to this idea that entrepreneurs are born and not made. They're very much made.
Yeah, they made a. I mean, like they can also take a plunge and then they can shape themselves, right? Like me, I was never an entrepreneur. I didn't have any uh, entrepreneurs to back me up or to advise me.
Yes.
I learned everything on my own, and all my experience has been in MNCs. And I said it's not like I wouldn't say I had anything uh, in my skill sets. I'm not. I wouldn't call myself as academically brilliant. I wouldn't call myself as street smart. I am an introvert. I don't have people skills, right? So I am like a traditional engineer who you would see in India, right? And the only difference is I took the plunge, and that's all it matters. Anybody who takes the plunge. It's, coming back to your question, so the idea was at that point of time in US there was a wave of subscription commerce companies coming up, what we call the subscription economies, right? None of those companies exist today, but that was called as e-commerce 2.0 wave. There were companies like Fab, which became like $1 billion, which became the fastest unicorn. Right, they went to $1 billion so fast. There was Groupon. There were fashion companies like Shoe Dazzle, Bombfell, Stitch Fix, right? So, and mostly they were trying to, instead of people picking their own choices, they were trying to kind of use technology towards that, right? Basically, the idea is that we create an online assistant, buying assistant for you, purchase assistant, which will understand you and help you pick the right clothing or right accessories, right? So it was still, if you see the original idea, it was pretty much a tech play. I didn't consider it as a fashion play. The idea was we will use AI, ML, understand the browsing behavior of users, have stylists create algorithms on what will suit a given skin tone, personality, etc. Like so it was pretty much a tech idea. But the idea was like, if this is going to be free service, like if somebody is going to give you personal styling service for free, why would you not take it up?
Right.
And again, that was another lesson, right? Like for me, that idea sounded like $1 billion idea, but in reality, that was not such a great idea. So always I think for entrepreneurs, their idea will sound like that, but you will only know like when you execute and see, right? But at that time, it was a tech play. I was confident in tech, so I thought like I would be able to build this. That's how we started Voonik.
So I mean, you came at it from a technical perspective, realizing that a kind of recommendation algorithm was something that could be built based upon, like you say, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And did you do anything to kind of assess what the market would think of that, or did you just take this from your own feeling that it would be useful to you and some group of friends that you had spoken to or something like that?
Yeah, it's the latter. I thought it's a problem for me. I didn't know how to buy right dress for me, and I just thought like there will be a lot of other people who will feel like me, and I didn't do much research. I didn't look at the market. I didn't do any customer interviews. I just plunged into that.
So that's awesome. So this, you had a co-founder, right, that you were starting with. I mean, what were the early days like of Voonik? Did you sort of self-fund initially?
Yes. So as I said, I had some funds, so I funded it initially for the first year. My co-founder and I are classmates from my UG, so we are friends, and we took a small place in Chennai. It was like 10,000 rupees per month, kind of rent. And in fact, that office had 2 startups before us, and both are now unicorns, like Freshdesk. And after Freshdesk, when Freshdesk got Series A and moved out, that office was handed over to ChargeBee. And when ChargeBee got Series A and moved out, we took it from them. So
you were blessed from the beginning.
Yeah, so those all gave us confidence, right? Like, hey, see Frusters, they went on, they became a unicorn. Like, see ChargeBee, they were able to raise fund and go move on. It should we for some reason I thought I will never fail. Somehow, like I thought, like it will be taken care of, right? So I think so. We started in a very small place, 10,000 rupees, probably like 500 square feet kind of an office, and got a couple more people, engineers to help us, and a couple of stylists part time, and just got started. And we just built it first, built the product.
Okay.
It took probably 6 months for us, around like or 4 or 5 months. We were ready with the product, and only when we launched, we figured out like there were no takers, and we were scratching our head like what to do next.
Yeah, I mean, on that side of things, clearly you mentioned that you had not at that stage done, market research and so on. You decided it was a good idea, it would be useful to you and others like you, and built it. And at the end of the 6 months, I mean, what was the plan for launch and pre-launch marketing? How did you handle that kind of thing so that you wouldn't meet a dead end when you actually released it?
So, like it was very naive thought. Like even today, a lot of entrepreneurs think like that. For us, just GTM was paid marketing, right? We said once the product is ready, we will just spend money on Facebook, Google, and we will get customers. It was as simple as that. And that's what we did. We just got the product right, and then we just advertised it Facebook, and we started getting customers, right?
Okay, so
again, it's
paid
I'm not saying
advertising
it's
was
the right medium, but that's how naive at least I was at the time.
okay. But the thing is, things moved on pretty quickly from then, right? I mean, obviously, Voonik scaled at a rapid rate of knots. So how did you get from that position to really, really ramping up quite quickly?
So I think first we got our seed funding of close to 500K. So what happened was, like, because I came from US, I did not have any connections with these investors, these VCs.
Yeah.
So I participated in a television program called Bloomberg Pitch, and it had like prominent angels as the judges there, and whoever wins that, it's like a reality show. It's like Big Boss for entrepreneurs. So whoever wins that will get the seed check of I think close to 500K, and I ended up winning that show, and that's how I got my 500K. So once we have the money, I think these are all, I'm not recommending this, right? But that's what we did. We just put that money on the problem again, right? We hired people. We spent more on marketing, and as we kept dialing up our marketing spend, we kept getting more users and more customers, and we were focusing on how do we scale from there. Like, at that point of time, we were not doing operations ourselves. We just tied up with the e-commerce portals at that time, like Jabong, and at that time there were companies like Fashionara, Zoe, etc., like Snapdeal. We tied up with all of them, and we created technology again which will route the orders to them. Like, so I did not do the operations myself, so it was easy for me to keep scaling just the demand part.
Right. So at the time, you could go to the retailers and say, "Look, we've got a product that will help drive business towards you," and then you had some kind of deal with them, did you?
Correct. So I was getting a commission out of that. Like, I didn't directly go to the sellers. I went to these portals, right? The e-commerce portals, which were existing at that point of time.
Yeah.
Because I thought, like, my forte is tech, so let me just focus on tech.
Yeah.
So I think, long story short, that did not work out. What ended up happening was we raised our Series A from Sequoia, and when we raised the money, like, we figured out this model is not going to scale, so we pretty much pivoted into fashion for mid-market, right? The idea was like to buy fashion for branded goods. Like, you had Mintra, which provided a very good experience, filter, search, good pictures. But if you want to buy unbranded items like saris, chudidars, etc., you go to horizontal companies like Amazon, Flipkart, where the experience is very generic. You get the same experience for fashion like you get for electronics. So we figured out what if we build Myntra for unbrand? Now, the reason that is interesting for us is the reason why Myntra is able to get that experience is they are working with big brands who has all this data organized. So they give you proper pictures, proper data, what is the color, what is the hemline, what is the collar pattern, everything. So it's very easy to feed the data and enable search, filters, recommendations, etc. The reason why it is not like that in an Amazon or a Flipkart is because these sellers are very small sellers from Surat and Jaipur, etc. They don't give data, and even if they give data, it's not standardized. So pretty much it's garbage in, garbage out. And our idea was that because we already had this AI/ML tech, which can use, which doesn't need this data from the seller. It can generate its own data. What is the color? What is the collar type? What is the sleeve length, hemline? Everything image recognition tech will create. Then I have as much data as Myntra to provide the same level of experience. So I think that's why it was still a tech play for us, and we thought like we could do that, which let's say an Amazon or a Myntra cannot do, and that worked out very well. So after our Series A, during Series A, we were doing around 1 crore a month in terms of our sales, and in a matter of like 15 months, we went to like almost 65-70 crores a month. So we scaled up pretty fast.
That's huge.
After our Series A, and yeah, so and that time we also moved to have our own sellers. Basically, we became a marketplace. Earlier, we were an affiliate business by partnering with other retailers. Then, but we decided for us to have control, it's better for us to become our own marketplace. And it was easy. So supply always comes when demand is there. Because we had demand, one fine day we just switched off other partners and asked the sellers to come on board directly, which they did. And it was very smooth transition, at least at that standpoint.
So were you doing the fulfillment yourself as well, or was this via the sellers?
So once we became a marketplace, so we did not take inventory. So it was directly shipped by the sellers.
Yeah.
But again, we created orchestration tech, which would enforce that seller ship on time, and which will enforce some quality check. And it will work with other delivery providers like Ecom Express Delivery, those type of delivery partners. So the tech was orchestrating all of that. But we did not have our own courier service. We did not have our own inventory. We did not.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So from that position then, where you kind of pivoted, I mean, firstly, in terms of the pivot and the agility in spotting when a pivot is required, would that be one of the key factors, would you say, in running a business, of knowing when to change direction a little bit with the business model?
It is, right? So I think in 99% of the cases, the idea that you start with, the product that you start with will be a wrong product. And I think the journey is about taking the feedback loop and keep iterating to get to a product which makes sense for the customer, right? I think that's pretty much the entrepreneurship journey, and that's the journey even I had to go through to figure out okay, finally, could I have got that idea back in 2013 when I started? Probably not, right? I need to go through that journey to figure that this is what probably we need to build.
Okay, amazing. So it's now probably a good time to think about the role of funding and how that changes the running of the business. So you mentioned that you did this pivot after a Series A funding, and that's partially what allowed you to do that. In your eyes, in running the business, how did the dynamics of running the business change once you had acquired funding, external funding?
Okay. So our business, again, I'm not recommending this. It was a wrong way to build. but it was always built with the assumption that we will get funding. So from day zero, even when it was self-funded, I was running it like a VC-funded company.
Yeah.
So which means it required high burn. You need to invest a lot upfront. You need to have spend a lot on quality team members even before you start generating revenue. So at least for me, after funding, I just accelerated on those aspects, right? So my burn increased. Like all of these are mistakes, obviously. That's why Voonik was not a success, right? So at the end, so we just accelerated spending. We did television advertisements. We did. We increased our spending on Facebook, Google. We ended up getting a lot of people. We were very um, as an organization. We had so many people, right? Which ended up creating a lot of issues as well. So, but the truth is like it was built like that from day zero, even when it was self-funded, because for this idea to work, this cannot be built in a self-funding way. Obviously, like I have been proven wrong, but that was my thought process at the point of time that this cannot be built in a self-funding way. These are the type of blitzscaling businesses which need funding. And
so, for just sorry to interrupt, but the reason for that is because you anticipate that the requirement for strong growth supersedes that of profitable growth at that point in the journey. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, there are a couple of reasons, right? One, obviously, it's a market share game. There are going to be one or two winners. There are not going to be 5 or 6 winners. So for you to be that top 1 or 2, you need to outspend the competition. Again, I'm not saying these are the right theories. These are incorrect, but that was my thought process at that time. That you need to outspend all this competition, and you need to burn money for 10, 20 years before you become profitable. And we look at companies like Amazon, who was like not making good margin, who was thinking like your margin is my opportunity kind of thought process.
Yeah.
So that's one reason that it's a market share game. Only 1 or 2 winners are going to emerge. It's the last man standing game. The second, the second reason is like we did not know how this business is going to ever become profitable. It's like airlines. So if you ask me to write in paper, like tell me, even unit wise, how will you be profitable? I didn't know the answer. So it was for us a way to figure out. We said like we will figure these out as we proceed. We will keep incremental, like how incrementally we are figuring out product market fit. We will incrementally also figure out the profitability piece, right? So to do that, there should be somebody who's sponsoring our burn until we figure that piece out and become profitable. So again, I am not proud of all of these things, but that was my thought process at that time.
And I mean, in fairness, during the dotcom bubble, I guess, I mean, there were crazy valuations going on for companies that didn't look like they were ever going to make any profit. And eventually, obviously, the market caught up with that. Do you think that that is a recurring theme, that eventually profit comes back into fashion?
I think it's for a market, it is cycles. There will be a cycle where people will be like, there will be crazy valuations, and there will be a cycle where people will go after profitability. So see, the part is a market or an investor can sustain that because they make so many bets and they change their strategy depending upon the market. But as a founder, I have only one bet, and if I make the wrong bet, like my entire life is gone, right? Like I have just done this one thing for my entire life, and my entire legacy is gone. It's all tied to that one idea. So I don't think we should think like that in terms of cycles. Like, is there a prof? It's like you can be a profitable small company. Like you can do that. Like I can build a business, right? But that's not why we start up. Like we wanted to build something which will make a dent, which will be our legacy. Yes, if I have to make money, I think there are a lot of ways. for me to build a small business which is self-funded and which can even make decent money, right? To give me a very good lifestyle, right? But that I could have even got by continuing working at Amazon. Amazon shares went up. It's not about that, right? It's about how to making that dent, creating that legacy for ourselves, and that's where we have to balance these two parts, right? The growth and the profitability piece. So it's not either, right? So today everybody will say it's all profitability. Tomorrow everybody will say it's growth. But the answer is like in balancing this.
Absolutely. And when it comes to that piece, going through various of the rounds of which will have involved presumably a lot of discussions with the senior management, with the venture teams. Did you find that there was going to be value over and beyond the just the actual funding? Was there, improved networking opportunities and other elements that made funding the most sensible option?
Yes. Again, like coming from a MNC background, right? I was not a typical entrepreneur, right? I didn't want to go through tough situations. I didn't want to go and arrange money to pay salaries. I didn't want to go and ask for debt to run the business, etc. Right? So I was not prepared for those things, which eventually ended up doing all of those. But at least, so for me, having a VC who will give me a peace of mind, who will not push me too much, who will not interfere too much in my decisions, who will be very professional. Let's say I lose their money. These people should not be taking that personally, because it's all like we are all trying to figure out something together. At the end of the day, like my ownership in Voonik was much lesser than, let's say, the investors. So I wanted somebody who are professional. Like basically, you can say like how I was looking for a MNC for my job, I was looking for a MNC for VCS, so that I will have such. Basically, I was not compromising on my lifestyle and quality of life, right? Even when I work, I wanted to have that freedom and that I want somebody to cut slack if I do something wrong.
And that obviously worked out, but you had enormous growth, and as you mentioned, eventually you started to feel that things were looking like a new way would be required. So what led to when did you recognize that, and what were the signs?
So see, now there was it was a bit sudden as well, right? Because two things are happening at the same time. One, after our Series B, by that time, like we had almost raised 30 million plus. We were in the market for Series C. And while we were having those conversations, market was slightly becoming softened. That like today, right? People were saying this is very high burn. This needs to be controlled. You have to become. There should be a path to profitability. We were having those type of discussions. Then suddenly, like, demonetization happened. Right? This was back in 2016, and that again, I made few decisions which were probably not the right decisions, or maybe I don't know, right? But which kind of increased my burn a lot. So basically, what happens was, just to give an example, like our top categories were shoes. At that point of time, I was selling more pair of shoes than Amazon. So now every shoe is, and it's a mid-market shoe, right? It's only 500 rupees. Now when to ship a 500 rupee shoe, I end up paying almost 100 to 125 rupees in shipping, because it's a bulky item. And if the customer doesn't accept it, it's all COD orders, cash on delivery. To bring it back, I have to pay another 125 rupees.
Yeah.
So when a shoe comes back for a 500 rupee shoe, I end up losing 250 rupees. Now all this is already figured out in our models, and we are still like at the time we were becoming unit economics positive because things were running right. When you suddenly stop, like in demonetization, now because it's cash on delivery, customers did not have cash. All these shoes, we are talking about like hundreds of thousands coming back. And now either I have to bear that loss or I have to pass it to the seller. And if I pass it to the seller will pretty much like lose his livelihood. He's not in a position to take that hit. And it was not his mistake. I don't know whose mistake is that. So I ended up taking all those losses. And so burn went up, obviously because of this scale came down. And it was kind of negative cycle, right? And again, the way how I had built my business model is you will be cash flow positive as long as you keep growing.
Yeah.
The moment you degrow, it's a death spiral. But I never imagined an event like demonetization or something could happen and do that. Again, I don't want to blame demonetization. As I said, at that time, there were other conversations also with serious investors which were not going well. But to give an example, right? Let's say I was selling 100 shoes 2 months ago. That bill I will be paying now because I will have 2 months credit period. Today, I will be selling 200 shoes. So I will be getting 2x the revenue. So I get 200, I pay 100. 100 is with me as cash. Next, when 200 becomes 400, I collect 400, I pay 200. 200 cash is with me. See, even though I'm not EBITDA positive, I can be cash flow positive. Now, when you stop, degrowth happens. When 200 becomes 100, I collect 100, I have to pay 200 past bill. So where will this 100 rupee cash will come? All this will never come in the P&L. So then I would say like my struggling period started right from there, and we investors obviously they couldn't, they will not be able to back up a business which is degrowing, at the same time burning more money. And there was a time when I had almost like 30 crore, 5 million kind of a debt, which was personally on me.
Right.
I didn't know how I was going to overcome those. And again, by God's grace, like I'm pretty much okay now financially and job wise as well. Like so, but at that time, we had to go through all of those struggling phases, right? Before we figure out things.
And I think a situation like that, where obviously it was just not, no one could plan or imagine that an event like that would take place, which fundamentally changed the dynamics of your delivery, essentially, and led to this. So let's start on how the merger began with your current organization.
So as I said, it was a very tough period. There is no investor money coming in. I mean, few investors stood by me, gave me some cash so that I can keep running the business. We did see on paper, we became profitable on a smaller scale, but it was not of interest to investors because again, like everybody's betting on becoming the number one player in the market. They are not trying to fund a lifestyle business. And the whole industry was going down. It's not just us. Our entire competition went down like us. It's not just Voonik. At that time, everybody were funded like 50, 100 million, right? So every investor has burned their fingers. So in fact, like, I mean, by the time I had already raised almost 35 million, still I was the lowest funded player in the industry. Like, there were people who got like 100 million, 75 million. Everybody went down. All the investors burned their fingers. So I was lucky to have some investors who knew that they are going to lose this money as well. Still, they gave me some money to keep the business alive. And so I said I did become profitable, but it was not interesting for investors. It was not interesting for me. As I said, if I had to make money, I would have built a business in a very different way, and I could do that, right? So I wanted to still go after that, making a dent kind of a business. So I wanted to do something else, and uh, take all the learnings that I had in e-commerce and go and do something. At the time, I said India was going through this phase, and then there was a phase where it was again hyper funding was coming in. So I was kind of looking at opportunities outside India. We looked at Indonesia, we looked at Vietnam, we looked at Bangladesh. That's when we came across ShopUp. They they were actually working with Voonik. Like we were supplying for them as well, and they were buying from Voonik. So uh, the original founders of uh, ShopUp, uh, they were pretty nice people. Like I always, one of the values at Voonik is be nice, right? We want our people to be fundamentally nice. Like we don't want to yell at people, we don't want to shout, we don't want a very negative experience, right? We want to go through it as calm as we can. And they had very similar DNA. And it was at the time they had only raised seed round. It was before even Series A. While I did get offers from some of the unicorns to come and get acquired by them, I felt like I wanted to build the business from the ground up. I wanted to be part of that. And this was the right stage, and we had common investors. So we decided like, okay, we will use our learnings. We will merge with ShopUp, and which was like probably the best decision I could have made. Today, as I said, as you kind of said in the intro, ShopUp is the biggest startup of Bangladesh. We have raised more than 200 million. Again, based on my experience and learnings, I don't want to go by fundraising, but the good part is we are not burning money. We are growing as organically as possible, and like I am not even giving a dime to Facebook. So all the learnings, right? So and yeah, and we are doing pretty good in Bangladesh, like in the commerce space. So overall things turned out well.
Fantastic. From an organizational perspective, bringing the two companies together, you mentioned that there was some commonality in the basic culture elements. Were there any challenges associated with bringing the two organizations together from a kind of workforce perspective?
Yeah, so obviously we are bringing together like teams from two different countries. Like I don't think the Indian engineers have experienced the Bangladesh culture, and similarly, like the way of working in Bangladesh is very different from how it works in India. So, but the part is, as I said, I give all the credit to the team. Like there was a DNA match. So so we were able to work together. We were able to figure out things. Again, I would see when ShopUp went through similar small pivots, like how demonetization happened in Voonik. Immediately after merger, COVID happened in ShopUp.
Yeah.
So, and we were a fashion company, mostly dealing with cross-border items. Borders were closed. Fashion items were not even allowed to be transported, right? So but luckily, like we were able to figure things out very quickly, and that I think is because like we brought this two ways of working together, right? And which means like we can work better than any Indian company because we know this Bangladesh part, and we can work better than any Bangladesh company because we know the Indian part. So we were able to figure things out, and in fact, like the COVID lockdown became a turning point for us rather than a setback.
Yeah, I mean, with COVID and obviously lockdowns, online seemed to do amazingly well. We all know how Amazon's things improved massively from an already great position to basically unassailable. Are you saying that a similar thing happened with you?
So COVID forced us a pivot.
Okay.
We were dealing with apparel. Now apparel cannot be, we cannot, I mean, like it's a lockdown, right? How can you ship an apparel? So you were allowed to ship only essentials, if you remember, like during that lockdown period. So we pivoted to essentials. and nobody was willing to deliver those. So we created our own logistics company. So today, the logistics company that we created, Redex, is number one in Bangladesh.
Oh.
By far, like number two player is like very, very far behind. And it started because of this reason. Today, we are at the peak, like our B2B commerce did like more than 1.2 billion like in sales and run rate, right? And there's no competition actually. It's not even a second player. So all these pivots were forced on us because of COVID. So and because it's COVID, obviously, like we were able to use it to reach out to these retailers because they couldn't source it from the market. Markets are closed. So we became the way for them to source. Our logistics product got organic demand because nobody else was delivering in the lockdown areas. So that's what I'm saying. It became kind of a turning point. It became a springboard for us, right? Very quickly, we grew very fast, and that was because of that lockdown. But there were the first couple of weeks of lockdown where we were just sitting and scratching our head, saying like, we are so unlucky. Demonetization happened in Voonik, like after ShopUp immediately, COVID has happened. Maybe like entrepreneurship is, we are not meant for entrepreneurship. We started thinking like that, but
in many ways, it probably brings out the best in you, though, doesn't it? Because each time one of these incredible and unexpected problems comes along, it forces you to rethink how you're going to do things, and you come up with solutions.
Exactly. So because if not for COVID, we wouldn't have pivoted. We wouldn't have gone into those areas, right? We might have, but it would have taken its own time. We wouldn't have got that much organic demand that we got. So I think because in the first 2 weeks, we didn't know how long will this lockdown continue. Like, is it going to come to a halt, or are things going to open up? But then like we just decided like, let's assume lockdown is going to be forever. Let's see how to build a business. And that was a good thought process for us to kind of build from there.
So does this, do you export, or is this for servicing primarily the domestic market?
Currently, we are looking only at the domestic market.
As in Bangladesh or India as well?
In Bangladesh.
Okay, so the way this comes together then is that the technology and process came from Voonik, and the fulfillment and so on came from the Bangladesh side. Is that correct? Is that how the synergy came together?
Yeah. So mostly yes, right? On the ground operations is happening in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
The tech happens from the India side.
All right. And so what do you think now moving forward? I mean, what does the future look like?
I think, as I said, now we are in what I call as honeymoon period.
Yeah.
We raised a lot of money. Most of the money is in the bank. We are able to. We still do mistakes. I would say, like, if I make 3 decisions, only one is right. 2 are going to be wrong. I have learned to live with that. Now I'm more looking at like, how can I reduce the damage that will be caused by these other 2 decisions? And how can I double up on the right decision? Right? So we keep making wrong decisions, but luckily we have room for error. And given the market scenario, nobody's asking us to grow blindly. We can grow profitably with a path to profitability. So things are good. We are in the honeymoon period. And after the stress that I had to go through for a year or 2, now probably I'm a bit like in more of a relaxing, cruising mode. And overall, I feel like ShopUp will be like what Alibaba and Tencent were to China. And you will see like how Gojek and Tokopedia, what they did in Indonesia, something similar we would be able to do in Bangladesh and other neighboring countries.
Well, that's amazing. You mentioned actually there about, the stressful periods that you went through, and I think that's a common theme with a lot of entrepreneurs. Some of the psychological roller coaster, if you like, of entrepreneurship, as well as that for the founders. Mental health is becoming a big concern in the workplace. How have you tried to accommodate those requirements within the workforce?
Yeah, I think the first 2 months I took it very hardly. Look at the periods of December, January, like immediately after demonetization. Like I used to get up and sit in my bed at night, morning 3 a.m., 4 a.m. because I didn't know how I am going to pay the salary, what is going to happen to as I said, there was almost 5 million plus in debt. How I'm going to handle the debt, how I'm going to settle that. There was no way, I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, right? I would say it happened for a couple of months, but then I was able to quickly recover. One, because I had a co-founder, right? It's not my problem alone.
Yeah.
I can always share it with him. Like it's 50% my problem, 50% his problem. So, and given that we both are classmates and friends, we were able to quickly come out of it. We even started joking about those things, right? And we started taking things lightly, and then like I forced myself to show up every day. I will not feel like go to office, right? I want to just lie down. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs go through that. They just sit at home, or they don't want to show up. They just they don't want to meet people. They don't want to do anything, right? I force myself to show up every day. Come to office, right? So the team gets the confidence when you are there, and something we will figure out something. So we will never know the answer, but can we make one step in the right direction, right? So I think as I said, 2 months probably I was in that negative zone, but very quickly once I came out of it, then I started thinking like again like an Amazon employee, right? What is the process? What is the process to solve these debts? You go and speak to those people. You give them a plan. You give them. So it's always that, right? Like nobody's going to raise any issue. Like if you are in contact with them, you give them a plan. You tell them what you are doing. All our debt providers gave a lot of slack for me in terms of timeline, in terms of alternative options. Like primarily because I think we were able to we were speaking to them, we were always working with them, we were always thinking everything as a problem, and the solution is a process. And yeah, so I think that helps. So overall, like I always think the worst case scenario, prepared myself for that, and that also probably helped. Like what's the worst case that's going to be, and this is where probably it will happen, right? So I think that helped. So that gives a lot of courage. I wouldn't call myself courageous when I began the entrepreneurship journey, but I think those 1 or 2 years gave a lot of courage. Today, in ShopUp or in any place, I can face any adverse situation. I'm not afraid anymore. Like I've become a new person. Right? I think that's what I said. Entrepreneurs are made, right? Probably I was made in that fire, which happened in that 15 months. So, but at the end of the day, it's all worth it. Today, I think it's all worth it. That's what I would say. I will never go back to doing a job again. I will never go back to being an employee.
Yeah, I mean, yours is definitely a very inspiring story in that you didn't regard yourself as naturally blessed with entrepreneurial talents at the outset. Your background was such that well, in many cases, entrepreneurship was kind of looked down upon compared to other alternative career paths. What would be your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs based upon things like how important is academics and whether they should consider entrepreneurship as a start? What would be your basic guidance to entrepreneurs in the making?
So yeah, so as I said, there is no special breed called entrepreneurs, right? That doesn't mean like everybody can be entrepreneurs. What I'm saying is you don't know. Only when you try it out, you will know. And I know of people who tried it out, did not like it. They went back to job. But giving 6 months, 12 months, 2 years to try that out is worth it. And what's the worst case? You go back, right? And there are a few things which we can do, like having a financial cushion to sustain you, so that you don't get stressed there. having working at a company to learn some of the basics before we do things. Right, certain preparations we can do, but again, it's we don't know like what will come out of it. Right, you can be successful, you can fail, you can be you might like it, you might not like it. But what I say is, if you don't try, you will never know. So I think everybody should at least try it, give a year or two, and see whether that works for them. Right? And then like again, so it's probably possible after a few years of working, it might position you to do that. It's like taking a year of sabbatical, etc. So yeah, so I think I am an example, like, to say anybody can be an entrepreneur. Like, I am probably the remotest person possible if you look at entrepreneur template. But and I know of a lot of people like me too. So yeah, that's what I would say. That it's not a special breed. Anyone can become an entrepreneur.
Give it a go. Exactly. Well, this has been a fantastic interview, and I think is an enormous amount of insight that you provided. So thank you very much, Sujayath, for being the #1 podcast interviewee. It's an inspiring story, and we wish you all the best with ShopUp.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Sorry, quickly before we end this, where can people find out more about you and ShopUp? I'll put the details in the description below.
Sure. I think anybody can reach out to me through emails.
Yeah.
It's sujayath@gmail.com. And I think if anything you want, I can probably point to you at the right place where you can get any information. And yeah, I'm on Twitter. Like, if you want to follow, I keep sharing my learnings. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Sujayath.
Hey, cool. Thank you.